Hello ladies and gents, this is another video brought to you by Hans Hood. As I'm talking rubbish for a bit, you can get a sneak peek of my Fidolis in the new setup, but this video is not about my Fidolis, but it's just there in the background. What I wanted to tell you about was my Patreon page. I'll put a link in the description below so you can pop to my page, and there's different tiers and different levels of support. And what I intend to do is give away freebies fairly regularly if you're at the right tier for it, for rewards and things like that. So if I get a nest and I don't have a use for it, like I've got a couple now, I'm thinking about giving them away as freebies and stuff like that. You can also get regular deliveries of my liquid feeders and stuff like that, so check it out, and it helps support my channel as a whole. So please go on there, please freaking support my channel, because that would be awesome. But I'll stop talking rubbish and move on to what this video is actually about, which is a care video stroke introduction to my, I'm going to butcher this guys, Cerapachys Sulcinodis. But don't worry, they've got a common name which is much easier to pronounce, the Asian raider ant. And I think I'll use that because it's easier. And I can't say Latin. Now what can I tell you about these ladies? The truth is, I can't tell you a lot. And the reason for that is because they're not very popular on the ant keeping in the UK anyway. Not like your Campanotas and stuff like that where there's oodles and boodles of information about there. These guys, there's not a lot. And to tell you the truth, when I was actually doing my research for them, I couldn't find much anything. I couldn't find any papers that I could particularly read about them in any great detail. And most of the information I've got is from comparing retailers and seeing how their different information goes together. I got these from Ants HQ, and currently, as of today, the only place that I know that's got them in stock is still Ants HQ. I'll put a link in the description below so you can check it out yourself. But I can say these ladies are absolutely gorgeous. I've kind of fallen in love with them, really. These actually belong to the same genus as the famed army ants are, so you can actually own, in theory, army ants yourself for the first time that I've ever been aware of. So I'm really looking forward to these ladies picking up and doing well. This colony, I can't tell you the numbers because they're always bunched up at the end like this, but I'm guessing I've got around 20 workers. And if you can see there's a tiniest batch of eggs. And going on to their behaviour, when they do produce eggs, they generally do it in bursts of a couple of 100 at a time, and they do it in batches and they take a break. So yes, this is a small pile of eggs, but maybe it's the start of more eggs to come. Who knows? It's reassuring to see that there's some eggs there because I've never actually seen the queen. Now the queen is generally between 12 and 14 millimeters long, and the workers are around 10 to 12 millimeters long. So you can guess they're very similar in size. And I think until I see them spread out all over the place, which they're not doing currently, I am never going to see the queen. But I think she's there, to be fair, because I've got eggs. This video was taken when I first got them, and as you can see, they're in a Chinese takeaway tub. They can climb the walls of this, but if you get a proper outworld, which they are in now, they can't climb smooth surfaces. So glass, should I say, words are hard today, or acrylic, they won't be able to climb that. So you don't need to worry massively about a barrier, and it also means you can have an open top outworld area if you choose to go that way. Personally, I don't, because I don't like the idea of other ants maybe getting out, which occasionally happens, and then attacking these guys. But realistically speaking, these ants specialise on attacking other ant nests. Now, they have been reported to travel in large columns where they locate an ant's nest and then they raid it for the young and take the young back and feed them to their own young. They don't make slaves or anything, they just eat the young, and they're specialists at that. So if they ever did get out, I'd be very mindful of your other colonies that you've got nearby, because they will, if they can and are large enough, raid them, steal the brood and potentially cause some serious damage. And in the wild, they get most of their protein source from raiding other ant nests, but we can't replicate that in the ant keeping environment, because there's no way in a million years I'm going to sacrifice one of my colonies to feed these ladies. But luckily enough, they will accept smaller insects, such as small baby nymph roaches and maybe fruit flies and stuff like that. But there is a caveat to that. They won't accept it if it's already dead. Realistically speaking, you really need to live feed these ladies with stuff like fruit flies and baby nymphs. If you are going to use a bigger roach, you could maybe kill it, and so it's still got some nervous system and stuff like that, so it's still twitching. But generally speaking, you need to be live feeding. Now, I know it's against aesthetic ants and is hashtag we don't approve, but I take that movement, which is cool by the way, as when you're doing it needlessly for likes. But when you're doing it because your colony requires it, I still think that's acceptable. But that's my interpretation of the we don't approve, so maybe aesthetic ants can clarify that for me. And of course I feed them the carbohydrates in the form of honey or some of those sugary snappy drinks that are quite popular on the retailer sites at the moment. Now this is their current setup. Generally speaking, I'll be quite happy to leave them in the test tube for a while, because you've seen from the other video there's bags of space in it and there's still plenty of water. But they've got eggs now. Now you might think, why is that even relevant that they've got eggs? Because that's a good thing, Hood. And you're right, but I cannot find any information about these ants if they require a substrate or not to be able to weave the cocoons when they're in the pupae stage. Now there's a lot of primitive species that are similar to these species that need that substrate, and I can't find if I do or don't with these. So I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to give them the option of having a nest with substrate in it. I do love that photo. I mean, look at the size of her jaws. They're just awesome. I've decided to put them in the high-tech medium nest, and I'll justify why I've decided to do that in a bit, because it's quite big for them. But I did review this product. Check out the link in the top right corner now, and you can watch that if you choose to. But first, let's talk about the climate. Temperature-wise, they're pretty easy. They're 21 to 27 degrees, which means in the UK at room temperature, you don't need to necessarily heat these guys. In winter, you might want to put a heat cable on them, but in the summer you'll probably get away with it because it's around the room temperature it is when it's high summer in the UK. So that's fairly easy. Humidity varies a little bit as well, but generally it's quite high at 50 to 70% humidity. So you want something that's got a good steady source of humidity that you can put the water in and not worry about it varying too much like you get with a lot of acrylic nests that I worry about. And that's why I picked this nest, because the plaster holds onto the moisture quite well, which gives it quite a stable platform, which in my experience of ants keeping, if you can master heat and humidity, you're pretty much on for a winner. Now these ladies are very similar to other types of ants that need some form of substrate to weave their pupae, to weave their cocoons. So I didn't want to risk it for a biscuit, because I couldn't get any information to confirm or deny that this is the case with these ladies. So I thought better not risk it for a biscuit and put some substrate in the nest. And this is why I picked this nest, because I can it's got chambers and stuff like that, and I can stop the soil, or the substrate should I say, getting in contact with the plaster that I'm actually going to hydrate, which is this one here. And the reason for that is because if it comes in contact with that, the substrate will just suck up all the moisture and it will become too moist in the nest, so that's not ideal for them. And yes, this is a large nest for the numbers I've got. I think I've got more than I might have, maybe 20 to 30. And I think 20 to 30, looking at the size, would probably be enough to move into this nest. So I'm kind of risking it for a biscuit, maybe a bit too big, but because it's like got little compartmented off, hopefully it won't be too bad for them. Well, fingers crossed. Now, if I just leave it like this, then that substrate's going to move all over the place, probably with the ants excavating in it as well, which is probably going to be unavoidable. But not only that though, when I move the nests around, which I tend to do fairly often with my nests anyway, so I need to secure it in place somehow. So how I do that is that I'm going to moisten the substrate. Now all you need is a couple of sprays of water when it actually comes out of this spray tub. Couple of sprays of water, and then what that will do is it will get it wet, but then I leave it aside and let it dry. And when it dries, it actually dries hard, so it will stay in place when it moves about and stuff like that, and the ants won't necessarily dig in it as much. But this is an important part as well, guys. If you're going to do what I'm doing here, don't put too much in, because they will make tunnels in it and you won't get the visibility that you want from this nest. Off on a slight tangent, but I'm also looking at doing this same thing with my Formica species. Now they need substrate because of the excess formic acid that they may produce and stuff like that, and it can't make a great environment, so they really need substrate to absorb that up. So I'm hoping to use this technique for that. So similar idea, just different application why I'm using it. And if we fast forward a week, you'll see that it's now nice and dry and in place. Now if I try and humidify that plaster humidity thingamajig in the bottom right corner now, all that moisture is just going to go into that sand substrate. So it's important that I don't do that. And if your guy's going to do this, don't, because it will just suck up all the moisture and it will be a mucky mess in there, and it would not be ideal for your ants. So you need to have some discipline there. So as you can see what I've done here, this is how the setup is now. The test tube's on the right, you've got an Ant Boy Elite Outworld, which I do think are pretty good for big species. Small species, they get out and they're a pain in the bum, so don't bother. But anything that's a medium or large species, these are great. And I've got that attached to the high-tech ants nest. Now you do actually see in the top right corner, that's actually the high-tech outworld for this nest, but I've got my Formica species, the slave makers in fact, attached to that currently. And if you notice as well, in the test tube I've still covered that test tube and it's still in the dark. Now you might be asking yourself, why have I done that when I want them to move into the nest? Because I'm not overly fussed about them moving into the nest. There is no urgency for it. The water hasn't run out in the test tube and stuff like that. It's all still cool. And I'm moving away, as an ant keeper, I am trying to move away from forcing moves. I'd much prefer to make the environment right in the nest that they want to move into, and they move into their own accord, because it's less stress, less anxiety, less likely to get deaths and stuff. And that's the way that I'm generally moving forward now when it comes to moving into nests. If I can afford them to stay in the test tube or their old setup for as long as they like, then I'll attach it and let them move at their own accord. Well, that's it for today then, guys. I hope you enjoyed this introduction stroke care video into my Asian raider ants. Please check out my Patreon page and support my channel, because that would be groovy. The link is in the description. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And that's it for me today. So bye-bye for now.